She was just a waitress struggling to survive until an undercover boss uncovered the truth. Her quiet courage changed everything. Marcus Daniels was not the kind of man who liked the spotlight. Even though he was a successful CEO with hundreds of diners under his brand name, he preferred to stay humble and low-key. His skin was dark, his smile calm, and his mind always sharp. He had built his empire from the ground up, once flipping burgers himself in a small food truck. He never forgot where he came from. That's why when he heard rumors about unfair treatment happening in one of his diners, he didn't just send an email or call the manager. No. Marcus decided to see things with his own eyes. It all started when a few anonymous complaints landed in the company's feedback system. The messages were brief but disturbing. One said, "Waitresses are getting their pay docked for no reason." Another read, "The manager threatens to fire anyone who speaks up." Most CEOs might have passed this on to HR, maybe ordered a general audit and moved on. But Marcus wasn't like most CEOs. He believed that every employee deserved respect, whether they were a cleaner, a cook, or a cashier. So he picked a quiet Thursday to begin his plan. He told his assistant he would be out of office for a week, gave no details to anyone except a trusted few, and packed some regular clothes, nothing fancy, just jeans, sneakers, and a plain polo shirt. He even added a little scruff to his face, and wore glasses he didn't need just to look more average. His target was a small diner in a town 2 hours away. It wasn't the biggest or most popular location, but something about the complaints made Marcus uneasy. There was smoke, and he was ready to find the fire. When Marcus arrived in the town, it felt like stepping into a different world. The streets were quiet, the buildings older, and everyone seemed to know each other. The diner was on the corner of a sleepy block, its sign flickering slightly. Inside, the smell of fresh coffee and fried food filled the air. It looked like any other branch of his company's diners, with the same menu, same colors, same uniforms, but he could feel something was different. He walked in and pretended to be a new trainee. The real reason for his visit was only known to the regional supervisor, who had arranged for Marcus to be hired quietly under a fake name, Jay. No one else in the diner knew who he really was. The manager on duty was a middle-aged man named Rick. He was tall, had thinning hair, and wore a forced smile. When Marcus introduced himself as a trainee cook, Rick barely looked at him. "You'll be on prep duty," he said sharply. "No questions. Do as you're told." That was the welcome. Marcus nodded and followed orders. He was assigned to chop vegetables in the back. The kitchen was small and loud, with the constant sound of sizzling pans and clanking dishes. The workers seemed tense. No one laughed. No one chatted casually. Most had their eyes down, working quickly, as if they were afraid to stop for even a second. In the middle of all this, Marcus noticed a waitress. She moved quickly from table to table, balancing plates with grace and smiling at every customer. Her name tag read Emma. She looked to be in her mid-20s, with tired eyes but a warm expression. Something about her stood out. Her energy was different. While others dragged their feet, she kept going, even when her shoulders looked heavy. With stress, later, during a short 10-minute break, Marcus sat on a crate near the back door, wiping sweat from his forehead. Emma came out, holding a cup of tea. She smiled politely. "First day?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, feels tense in there." Emma chuckled softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You'll get used to it. Just keep your head down." Marcus hesitated before speaking. "Everyone seems a bit scared. Is the manager always like that?" So he looked around before answering. "Let's just say he likes control, and a little too much sometimes." Marcus didn't push further. He just made a mental note over the next few days. Marcus watched closely. Rick barked orders constantly. He'd scold employees in front of customers, make snide remarks, and treat mistakes like crimes. What was worse, he played favorites. What? Few workers, especially young male employees, were allowed to take longer breaks or chat while working. But others, like Emma and the 2 elderly waitresses, were always under pressure. Marcus noticed that Emma never complained, never slowed down, never showed anger. But her eyes told a different story. One evening, she accidentally dropped a glass of water and Rick made a big show of yelling at her in front of the whole diner. "That's coming out of your paycheck," he snapped. Marcus felt his fists tighten. That wasn't how things were supposed to work. Docking pay for mistakes like that wasn't just unfair, was against company policy. But no one said anything. No one defended Emma, not even the customers. After that incident, Marcus decided to get closer to her. During another break, he asked, "Did he really mean that? About your pay?" Emma gave a bitter smile. "Yeah, he always does that. Says we broke a rule or made a mess or didn't follow dress code. Next thing we know, there's money missing. From our paycheck, do you get a written notice? Anything official?" She shook her head. "Nope, just his word. And if we complain, he says we're lucky to have a job." Marcus kept his face neutral, but inside he was boiling. He knew every diner was supposed to use a digital payroll system. Managers had no right to touch wages without documented reasons. There was supposed to be accountability. But Rick was clearly running his own rules here. The question was, how? Long had this been going on, and how many employees had suffered silently? One night, Marcus stayed back late to help clean. Rick had left early, and the other workers were too tired to talk. Emma was still wiping down tables. Marcus asked gently, "Why don't you report him? I mean, this isn't right." Emma paused, then looked at him with honest eyes. "Who would?" "Listen, he says the company doesn't care about people like us, that we're replaceable. I'm a single mom. Can't risk losing this job. Even if they dock my pay, at least it's something." Those words cut deep. Marcus had worked so hard to build a company that claimed to care about its workers. But here was a young mother, afraid to speak up because she thought the system wouldn't protect her. Marcus realized then that this wasn't just about one manager misbehaving. It was about trust that had been broken. Over the next 2 days, Marcus noticed even more strange things. Rick would make staff clock in late or leave early without adjusting their hours. He'd quietly change schedules and tell people their lateness was a reason for docking pay. But there were no written warnings, no proper records. Everything was handled with fear and threats. One afternoon, a teenage boy named Luis whispered to Marcus, "Be careful. Rick doesn't like when people ask too many questions." Luis had only been working there a month. But even he had already seen how the system worked: obey or disappear. Marcus had seen enough. He wasn't ready to blow his cover just yet, but he knew what he had to do next. He started keeping a notebook. Every time Rick changed the schedule, yelled at someone, or made a threat, Marcus took quiet notes. He watched, listened, and waited. The pieces were coming together. He now knew why the workers were scared, why they kept their heads down, and why Emma's smile looked like it was held together by hope and fear. This wasn't just a bad manager. It was a quiet injustice happening every day. In front of everyone, but no one with power had seen it until now, and Marcus Daniels, the CEO, disguised as a trainee cook, was about to change everything. Emma moved around the diner like she had a clock ticking inside her. From one table to another, carrying heavy trays, taking orders with a polite voice, cleaning up spills, and handling rude customers with a forced smile. Anyone watching her would think she was just a regular hard-working waitress doing her job. But Marcus, still pretending to be a trainee named Jay, had learned enough in his short time at the diner to see that there was more behind her tired eyes. He had been there for a few days now, doing prep work in the back kitchen. His arms ached, from chopping vegetables, scrubbing pots, and taking out trash. But he didn't mind. In fact, he welcomed the physical labor. What bothered him more was what he was seeing around him, especially how Emma was being treated. She was easily one of the most reliable workers in the diner. Never late, always polite. She never argued or complained, even when customers were nasty or when Rick, the manager, shouted at her in front of everyone. Marcus had watched Rick blame her for things that weren't her fault. Like one time when the fryer broke down and food took longer to come out. Rick shouted at Emma as if she had personally unplugged the machine. And the worst part? She just nodded quietly and kept working. One morning, Marcus came in early to help with the breakfast shift. He found Emma already there, setting up tables and making sure everything was clean. Her eyes were puffy, like she hadn't slept well. "Hey," Marcus said softly. "You all right?" Akima forced a small smile. "Yeah, just a long night. My son was sick. Had to take care of him." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "You have a kid?" She nodded. 5 years. Old. His name's Mason. He's everything to me. He was surprised. Emma didn't look much older than 25, and he'd never heard her talk about her personal life before. But that morning, something in her had softened. Maybe she was just tired enough to talk, or maybe she felt a little safe around him. "You ever get help with him? Like daycare?" Marcus asked. Emma shook her head. "I can't afford daycare. I leave him with my neighbor during my shift. I pick up extra hours when I can. Sometimes I don't even get to eat at home, but at least Mason does." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. The way her hands trembled slightly as she wiped the table. The way she blinked slowly, like every second of rest mattered. This was more than just a waitress trying to earn a paycheck. This was a young mother fighting to survive in a world that wasn't giving her any breaks. Later that day, while Emma was out of earshot, Marcus asked, "Another waitress about her?" "Emma." The older lady, named Marla, said, "She's the strongest one here. Doesn't complain, doesn't quit. If anyone deserves better, it's her. But I heard Rick docks her pay." Marcus asked, pretending he was just curious. Marla sighed and leaned in. "Yeah, he does it all the time. Says she's not following policy. Once he said her apron was wrinkled and took $20 off her paycheck. Another time, he claimed she was 2 minutes late. 2 minutes, and boom, money gone. She can't fight him. She's got that little boy and no one to back her up." Marcus felt his blood boil. Docking someone's pay over things like that was not just unfair, it was illegal. His company had rules. They were supposed to protect workers, especially ones like Emma. But clearly, Rick was running the place like his own little kingdom. That evening, Emma and Marcus were assigned to clean. Up together after the shift. The diner was closed, lights dimmed, and the last customer had left. The smell of fried food still hung in the air, and the chairs were up on tables. As they wiped down the counters, Marcus spoke gently. "Emma, ... can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to." She looked at him and nodded slowly. "Why do you stay here? Why this job?" She stopped wiping, her hands still holding the rag. Her shoulders dropped a little, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. But she didn't. Instead, she gave a soft, sad laugh, "Because it's the only one I've got. Because my son needs food and rent needs paying. Because this town is small, and there aren't many places that'll hire someone like me. No degree, no car, no fancy resume. I applied to 3 other places before this and never got a call back." Marcus listened silently. Emma continued, "Rick. ... He knows that. He knows we don't have anywhere else to go. That's why he does what he does. We're too scared to speak up." "What about HR? Or calling corporate?" Marcus asked carefully. "I tried once," she whispered. "Sent an email to the company's website. A week later, Rick found out. He told me if I ever did that again, he'd find a reason to fire me. I've got no proof, no papers, just missing money on my paychecks and his word against mine." Felt something twist in his chest. He had created this company to be better than that, to treat people fairly. Now here was one of his own branches, abusing the system, scaring workers, stealing from them, and worst of all, making them believe that no one cared. He decided right there that he wasn't going to let it go. Over the next few shifts, Marcus started paying closer attention to how Rick handled time cards. He noticed Rick kept a notebook, a small black one that he often wrote in when no one was looking. Marcus suspected that notebook had the real records. One afternoon, while Rick was out smoking, Marcus peeked into the office and saw the notebook. Sitting on the desk, he didn't take it, but he noted the way it was organized. Names, dates, reasons for deductions, and dollar amounts. Later that night, Emma and Marcus were walking out of the diner together. "Thanks for covering the grill." "Today," she said. "You're a fast learner," "Thanks," Marcus replied. "You ever think of leaving town?" She smiled sadly. "Every day, but how?" I don't even have enough saved for a bus ticket. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then asked, if you could do anything at all, what would it be? Emma looked up at the night sky. I'd go back to school, maybe be a nurse, or open a bakery. I love baking. Mason loves my cookies. He says they taste like happiness. Marcus smiled. That was the most beautiful thing he'd heard all day. She glanced at him and said, why are you asking me all this anyway? He hesitated. Just trying to understand what people go through. You work so hard and you still get treated unfairly. It's not right. Emma shrugged. It's life. Not everyone gets a fair shot. But Marcus wasn't willing to accept that anymore. The next morning he came in early and saw Rick again filling out the paper logs. Marcus asked, pretending to be casual, why do you write everything by hand? Doesn't the company have a system for that? Rick narrowed his eyes. Company system's too slow. I do it my way. Got a problem with that? Marcus shook his head. Nope. Just curious. Later, during lunch rush, Rick got busy yelling at a cook, and Marcus slipped into the office again. This time, he quickly snapped photos of the black notebook with his phone. Every page now had real proof. Over the next 2 days, he talked to other workers in small conversations. One of the older waitresses confessed that she'd lost nearly $200 from her paychecks over the last 2 months. Another young man said Rick made him clean toilets during his unpaid break, or else he'd be written up. Every person Marcus talked to had a similar story. Emma had opened the door, and now Marcus saw the full picture. This wasn't one mistake. This was a pattern, a system of abuse and silence. And now, Marcus Daniels, the undercover boss, was ready. To end it, he just needed one more day, then he would reveal everything. The shift had just ended, and the lights inside the diner were being turned off one by one. The last few customers had left, and the kitchen was finally quiet after hours of sizzling pans, boiling oil, and the clanging of plates. Outside, the air was cool and the street almost empty. Emma tied a scarf around her neck and walked out, holding her worn-out bag over one shoulder. Marcus, still pretending to be Jay, caught up to her on the sidewalk. Hey, mind if I walk with you? He asked. Emma looked over her shoulder, then gave a soft nod. Sure, it's not far. They began walking in silence. The street lamps cast long shadows on the sidewalk. Most stores were closed, and only the hum of a passing car could be heard now and then. After a few steps, Emma spoke first. You're different, you know. Most people who come to work here don't care. They keep their heads down, do their job, and leave. But you actually listen. Marcus smiled faintly. Maybe I just care too much. She laughed a little, then shook her head. I wish more people did. They walked for another minute before Emma stopped and sat on a low wall beside a small grocery store. This is where I usually wait for my neighbor. She watches Mason during my shifts. I don't want to wake him by going in too early. Marcus leaned on the wall next to her. He doing better? Your son? Emma nodded. Yeah, his fever broke last night. He's a strong kid. Smarter than me, I think. She smiled proudly. Marcus looked at her carefully. Did you ever tell him what you go through at work? She shook her head. No, never. He's just a kid. All he needs to know is that his mom loves him and will always be there. There was a pause. Then Marcus asked gently, Emma, when did all this start? The pay cuts and the threats. Exhaled slowly. It's been going on for over a year now. At first, it was just small things. Rick would say I made a mistake and take a few dollars off my pay. I didn't question it. Then it became a pattern. He started saying I was late even when I wasn't, or that I wasn't smiling enough with customers. Can you believe that? Smiling? He once told me that not smiling made the diner look bad, and he docked my tips. Marcus's jaw tightened. You never got any proof? No paper? No warning letters? Nope. Nothing official. Just his word. And when I asked, he'd tell me I was being disrespectful, and that disrespect could get me fired. Marcus nodded slowly. That's not right. You know that, right? Emma looked at him, her face tired but honest. Of course I know. But knowing something is wrong doesn't always mean you can fix it. Not when you're on your own. He understood that deeply. Many people thought justice came easily, but it didn't. Especially not for someone like Young, single, underpaid. I'm trying to survive in a system that didn't protect her. Emma, Marcus said carefully. What if I told you someone was trying to change all this? What if someone was watching and taking notes and wanted to make things right? She looked at him with a mix of confusion and hope. What do you mean? He paused. He wanted to tell her everything, that he was the CEO, that he had seen enough, and that Rick's days were numbered. But he knew the time wasn't right yet. He needed more evidence. He needed the truth to be undeniable. So instead he said, I think someone's listening. I think things are going to change soon. Just hang in there. Emma stared at him, then nodded slowly. I've been hanging in there for a long time. Hope you're right. The next day, Marcus arrived early. Rick hadn't shown up yet, and the diner was still unlocking its doors. He walked into the office, careful not to draw attention. Black notebook was still there, just like before. He opened it again and this time went page by page, taking photos quickly and neatly. The notebook listed dates, names, and made-up reasons for pay deductions. MAM proper tone. Luce missed a spot on the floor, Marla late by 3 minutes. Even though he'd seen her arrive early every day, Marcus saw something that shocked him. Even more, Rick had been taking portions of pooled tips and writing down fake deductions to explain it. That money wasn't his to take. The waitstaff earned those tips. It was pure theft. He took pictures of every page, every fake excuse, every stolen dollar. His heart pounded. He knew this would be enough. Later that afternoon, Rick came into the kitchen, holding the notebook, smirking as he passed by Marcus. You'll be staying late tonight, Jay. Trash run, deep clean. That's what happens when a new guy forgets. To wipe the stove, Marcus hadn't forgotten. The stove was spotless. Rick was just making up reasons again. Marcus nodded quietly. Sure, whatever you say. That night, while Emma was sweeping, Marcus joined her in the dining area. The place was quiet, lights dimmed, and the street outside was nearly empty. Emma, he said softly, I know I asked you this before, but do you have any old pay stubs? She looked confused. Why? Just curious. I want to compare a few things. I'm trying to help. Emma hesitated. I've kept some at home, yeah. I can bring them tomorrow. Because I think we're close to proving everything, Marcus said. If we can match those with Rick's notes, he can't hide anymore. Emma's eyes widened. Wait, you saw his notes? Marcus looked around, then nodded slowly. Yeah, and I took pictures. All of them. She looked shocked, scared even. If he finds out, he won't, Marcus assured her. And even if he does, he won't be in charge for much longer. Emma stared at him. Who are you really, Jay? Marcus smiled faintly. It's just someone who believes you deserve better. That night, Emma didn't say anything else. But the next morning, she came in early and handed Marcus a small folder. Inside were 6 months of pay stubs. Some weeks her hours didn't match what she had worked. Other weeks, unexplained deductions were circled in red ink. This is all I've got, she whispered. If this can help, then use it. Smiled. It helps more than you know. He spent the next hour comparing the stubs with the notebook photos. It was a perfect match. Rick's fake deductions, the missing hours, the stolen tips, they all lined up. This was the proof Marcus had been waiting for. Now came the final step. Marcus made a quiet call to his regional supervisor and asked for an emergency meeting at the diner. He told her everything. His undercover visit, the manager's misconduct, the stolen wages, and the fake records. She was shocked, but supportive. We'll be there tomorrow morning, she said. Don't tell anyone. The next morning, the regional supervisor and 2 company investigators arrived quietly, dressed in plain clothes. They waited outside while Marcus changed into his real clothes, a crisp black suit, polished shoes, and a gold watch. No more disguise. The time had come to reveal the truth. Inside the diner, Rick was already yelling at a young server over a spilled drink. The staff looked tired as usual, heads down, eyes empty. Then the door opened, and Marcus walked in. Everyone turned. Rick looked up, confused. "Can I help you?" Marcus smiled calmly. "Yes, I'm Marcus Daniels, CEO of this company. I'm here for a staff meeting." Rick's face went pale. His mouth opened, then closed. Emma gasped quietly. Covering her mouth with her hands, the other workers whispered, stunned. Marcus continued, "I've spent the past week here, working under the name Jay. I've seen everything with my own eyes. I've taken notes." Rick tried to speak. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding." Marcus raised a hand. "No, it's not. I've seen the notebook. I've seen the time card manipulation. I've seen the fake deductions and heard how you treat your staff. And I have photos. I have pay stubs. I have testimonies." The investigators entered behind him, holding clipboards and documents. One of them held up Rick's notebook in a plastic bag. Rick's voice cracked. "Can't prove we already did," Marcus said firmly. "You're fired, immediately, and you'll be hearing from our legal team." The staff stood frozen. Emma looked like she might cry, but she stood tall. Marcus turned to the workers. "To all of you, I'm sorry. It should never have happened, but it ends today. Every dollar that was stolen will be returned. Every hour you worked will be accounted for. And from now on, this diner will be a place of respect." Silence filled the room for a moment, then Emma stepped forward, her voice shaky but strong. "Thank you." Marcus smiled at her. "No. Thank you for having the courage to keep going when no one was listening, but someone was. And now, everything's about to change." The air inside the diner felt heavier than usual, as if the truth had changed the atmosphere completely. Just the day before, this place was full of quiet fear and forced smiles.
Wow.
The same workers who had been walking on eggshells looked around with wide eyes, unsure whether to believe what they had just witnessed. Marcus Daniels, the man they thought was a quiet new trainee, was actually the CEO of the entire company. The very person who owned the diner had worked beside them, scrubbed floors with them, and eaten lunch with them. Rick, the manager who had bullied them for so long, had just been exposed and fired in front of everyone. The man who used fear and threats to control others now stood speechless, his hands shaking as two investigators collected papers and evidence from his office. Rick's face was pale, and he kept muttering to himself, trying to find excuses. But no one was listening anymore. His time was up. Marcus stood in the center of the diner, no longer wearing a plain uniform but dressed in his sharp black suit. He didn't look angry or proud. He just looked steady, calm, and focused like a man who had seen too much and was finally ready to set things right. "I know many of you are feeling shocked right now," Marcus said, looking around the room. "You've spent months or years working under pressure, afraid to speak up, unsure if anyone would ever believe. I'm here to say that I believe you. More than that time, here to do something about it." No one spoke. They just listened. The room was completely silent, the only sound coming from a ceiling fan spinning slowly above. Marcus turned to Emma, who stood near the counter, her hands still trembling from everything that had just happened. Their eyes met. She didn't say anything, but he could see the look in her eyes. It was something between relief and disbelief. She had carried pain for so long, buried it under work and worry. Now, it was finally being lifted. "I want to start with an apology," Marcus continued. "You were failed by the system. You were failed by me. I created this company with a promise to build a workplace where people are treated with dignity and fairness. Somewhere along the way, that promise was broken, but it ends now." One of the investigators stepped forward and handed a packet of papers to each staff member. "These are the reports from our investigation," Marcus explained. "Every paycheck that was tampered with has been reviewed. Every missing hour, every fake deduction, every stolen tip, we have records. And starting today, we're going to pay you back every cent." Emma opened her packet and stared at the number inside. It showed her back pay a total that made her hand cover her mouth in shock. It was nearly $3,000. The $3,000 that had been stolen from her over the past year. Her eyes filled with tears. "Marla, The older waitress, who had worked at the diner for over 20 years, whispered, "I thought that money was gone forever." "It's not gone," Marcus said gently. "It's yours. And I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Luis, the teenage busboy, raised his hand nervously. "Are we going to get new management?" "Yes," Marcus said firmly. "Rick is gone. A new manager will be assigned soon. Someone with experience, someone trained in fairness and respect. But until then, I'm placing Emma in charge as interim supervisor." Everyone turned to look at her. Emma's face went pale with surprise. "Memi?" She stammered. "I'm just a waitress." "No," Marcus said, stepping closer. "You're a leader. You've been holding this place together while others tried to tear it apart. You kept working when things were unfair. You protected your coworkers. That's what leadership looks like." The room filled with soft claps, slowly building as one by one, staff members began to applaud. Emma looked around, blinking fast to stop the tears. She had never imagined a day like this would come, a day when she wasn't just surviving, but finally being seen. Marcus smiled at her. "You won't be alone. We're sending a full support team to train the staff, update our systems, and provide assistance where needed. And a mere position comes with a raise. A real one." Shook her head in disbelief. "I don't know what to say." "Just say yes," Marcus replied, smiling. "You earned it." Emma nodded, finally letting a tear fall. "Yes, I say yes." The room broke into louder applause, and for the first time in a long time, the diner felt like a place of hope. After the meeting ended, Marcus invited everyone to sit down for lunch on the house. He even helped serve food, back in his old apron, laughing and chatting with the team like the first day he arrived. But now, everything had changed. People smiled for real. They looked each other in the eyes. They weren't just coworkers anymore. They were a team while people ate. Marcus pulled Emma aside for a private conversation. "I want to tell you something else," he said. "We're offering new opportunities through our company foundation. It's called Lift Up. It gives scholarships and grants to employees who want to go back to school or start a small business." Emma looked shocked. "Really?" "Yes. And I want to nominate you for both," he said. "You once told me you dreamed of becoming a nurse or opening a bakery." Her eyes lit up. "I remember Mason loves my cookies." Marcus chuckled. "Well, now you can turn that dream into something real." Emma smiled. It was a deep, honest smile, the kind that came from her heart. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Marcus shook his head. "No, thank you for having the courage to keep going, even when the world tried to hold you down." Before leaving, Marcus held another brief meeting with the staff. "I'm also launching a few company-wide changes. From now on, all locations will have an anonymous employee hotline. If something feels wrong, you can report it without fear. We're also switching to a digital time tracking system that can't be edited without approval from corporate. And we're increasing audits to make sure this never happens again." The employees looked relieved. These were the changes they needed. Real changes. That afternoon, customers began trickling in again. Word had spread around town about what had happened. Many of the regulars came in not for food, but just to say they were glad someone had stepped in. One customer, an older woman, gave Emma a small bouquet of flowers and said, "You're a hero, sweetheart." Emma smiled and held back tears. She was just doing her job, but now, for the first time, she felt like it really mattered. Marcus stayed until late evening, helping Emma close the diner. As they wiped the last few tables, she turned to him. "Do you really think things will stay better now?" Marcus nodded. "I don't just think it. I'll make sure of it." Paused, then said, "And when you're ready, if you ever want to run your own diner, or a bakery, or anything else let me know. I believe in you, Emma." She laughed softly. "Yeah. You're going to make me cry again." "It's okay," he said. "This place has seen enough tears of pain. Now it's time for some tears of joy." Emma walked to the door and flipped the sign from open to closed. Then she turned around, smiling wider than she had in months. "Tomorrow's gonna be a good day," she said. Marcus smiled back. "Yes, it will." And as he walked into the night, the stars above seemed just a little brighter, as if the whole world had taken a deep breath and was finally beginning to heal. The next morning, Emma opened the diner like she always did. but everything felt different. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't dreading the day. She wasn't scared of being yelled at or having money taken from her paycheck for no reason. Instead, she felt something new: confidence. She held her head a little higher as she unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open. She wore a clean apron, the same one she'd worn for months, but it somehow felt better today. It wasn't just cloth tied around her waist anymore. It felt like a badge of honor. She wasn't just a waitress now. She was the interim supervisor of the diner, chosen by the CEO himself. As staff members began arriving one by one, they greeted her differently, with warmth and respect in their voices. Marla gave her a little hug. Luis grinned and said, "Boss?" Lady and Emma laughed, blushing. Everyone was smiling. The fear that once filled the air had disappeared. Something had shifted inside them all. The first breakfast orders came in, and everything ran smoothly. Emma coordinated things calmly, gave directions kindly, and helped wherever needed. She didn't bark orders or act like a queen. She led like she always had, by example. Customers noticed too. They saw the energy in the room was lighter. As the waitresses chatted more, the kitchen crew looked relaxed, and the food came out just as good, if not better. A few of the regulars asked Emma what had changed, and she smiled and simply said, "We're just doing things right now." Meanwhile, Marcus had returned to the city, but remained deeply involved. He followed up with the regional team every day. He personally signed off on each reimbursement check. He also had a special package delivered to Emma's address, a handwritten letter from him, thanking her again, along with a scholarship certificate under the Lift Up Foundation. The letter said, "Emma, you reminded me why I started this company. Your strength, grace, and heart are what make this place worth fighting for. The world needs more people like you, not just working jobs, but leading them. Enclosed is your full scholarship to start classes at the local community college. You choose nursing, baking, or something entirely different. We'll be cheering for you every step of the way." Marcus Daniels. When Emma opened the letter that night at her small kitchen table, with Mason coloring beside her, she cried. Not the kind of tears she'd cried for months out of stress, fear, or exhaustion. These were warm, happy tears. Mason noticed and tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, why are you crying?" She wiped her eyes and pulled him into her lap. Because something good finally happened. He looked at the letter, then at the certificate, and said, "Is this for your cookies?" Emma laughed, holding him tight. "Maybe, or maybe it's for something even bigger." That weekend, the company held a special event at the diner. Marcus returned, this time with reporters and cameras. But it wasn't for publicity. It was to show the world what happens when regular people stand up, speak the truth, and are finally heard. The event was called Voices of the Floor. Emma was asked to speak. She stood in front of the crowd, nervous but proud, dressed simply, hair tied back, and Mason sitting in the front row, swinging his feet and grinning. "I never thought I'd be standing here," she began. "I never thought anyone would hear my voice. For a long time I worked here quietly. I let unfair things happen because I was scared. I thought speaking up would cost me everything. But then someone listened. And he didn't just listen, he acted." She looked at Marcus, who stood beside her, nodding. "Now, I know my worth. And more importantly, I know that everyone who works hard deserves respect. This diner isn't perfect, but we're changing. And we're going to keep changing." Crowd applauded. Marcus came up and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Emma is just the beginning," he said to everyone. "We're reviewing every location in this company, every single one. We're making sure that the people on the floor are the ones doing the real work, are treated like they matter, because they do." After the speeches, the staff were treated to a surprise bonus. Marcus handed out checks to each employee for their unpaid wages, plus a little extra as a thank you. The company had also launched a new app where workers could track their hours, see their schedules in real time, and report any issues directly to corporate. One of the biggest surprises came when Marcus announced that Emma would be given the opportunity to fully manage the diner if she completed a 3-month training program. It would come with a real manager's salary, benefits, and full support. Emma couldn't believe it. She had never even imagined becoming a manager. Her dream had always just been to survive, to feed Mason, pay the rent, and get through the week. But now, for the first time, she could imagine building something more. A future. As days passed, the diner's reputation spread. More customers came in, not just for the food, but for the story. The local newspaper called Emma the Diner Angel. TV stations ran small features about the Undercover CEO and the brave waitress who stood up for what was right. But Emma never let the attention change her. She still cleaned tables. She still brewed the morning coffee. She still gave Mason piggyback rides on her way home. One evening, as the diner was closing, Marcus visited again, this time quietly, with no cameras. He sat at a corner table, and Emma brought him a slice of chocolate pie. "I remember you said you liked this one," she said with a smile. He nodded, taking a bite. "Still my favorite." They sat together for a moment, just two people who had shared something life-changing. "How's the training going?" he asked. "Good," she said. "It's a lot to learn, but I'm enjoying it." He looked around. "The place feels completely different." "That's because people aren't afraid anymore," she said. "Fear is heavy. But once it's gone, there's space for other things, like laughter and hope." He smiled. "Well said." Emma took a deep breath. "I want to thank you again. Not just for what you did, but for seeing me. Really seeing me." Marcus nodded. "You saw yourself first. I just helped you bring it out." Later that night, Emma walked home with Mason asleep on her back. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "We made it, baby. We're going to be okay now." Months passed. Emma completed her training, officially becoming the manager of the diner. She also started taking classes at night, working toward a degree in culinary arts with a focus on baking. Her dream of opening a bakery didn't seem so far away anymore. The diner became one of the top-rated branches in the region. Staff turnover dropped, customer reviews soared, and the team became close like a family. They even started a weekly community night free meals for low-income families. Emma led it herself, saying no one should feel invisible. Not here. Other branches of the company began following her example. Marcus made her story part of the company's new training manual, titled Leadership from the Floor. Often said, if you want to find a leader, don't just look behind a desk. Look behind the counter. Look at the ones who keep going, even when no one's watching. One day, a young new waitress asked Emma, "Weren't you scared back when things were bad?" Emma looked at her, smiled, and said, "Yes, but I did it anyway. And sometimes that's all it takes." And that was the truth. Because Emma was no longer just a worker, or a single mom struggling to get by. She was proof that when the right person listens, and when one brave voice speaks up, the entire world can start to change. And somewhere out there, a little boy named Mason would grow up knowing that his mom wasn't just strong. She was unstoppable.